Hello everyone and welcome to Egypt. This is Assassin's Creed Origins. Now, I should preface this, of course, by saying that my opinions may be a little bit different on this game than some because although I am a fan of the Assassin's Creed games since the beginning, I also have skipped a lot of them because I haven't really been interested in a lot of the more recent ones. So, I played the first Assassin's Creed and the second AC as well because I thought they were a really interesting concept and I wanted to see how it would go. But after that, I skipped several all the way up until AC4, which, I mean, I saw that it was going to be about pirates and that age, so I, had to try that one. And I really enjoyed it. And then I continued to skip all of the Assassin's Creed games up until now, so things like Unity and Syndicate. And then I saw that Origins was going to take place in ancient Egypt, and that is one of my favorite historical settings and not really explored in games all that often, so I decided that I definitely had to check this one out. So, that being said, even though I've been a fan of this series since the beginning, I've only actually played 4 of the games. And I think that might give me a bit of a different perspective on the series, because although I know I've seen it at various snapshots throughout its development, I'm also not experiencing fatigue of the series because I've played every single one of them and have gotten kind of tired of how it's gone. That being said, though, this game has changed up a lot of how it's gone, so I'm going to try and kind of show it or talk about it from the perspective of someone like me, and also maybe someone like a person who may be sick of the Assassin's Creed formula and maybe looking for a change, because they have done that. So, in order to avoid some story spoilers and the like, I'm going to be doing some side content, no main story missions in this video. And where I currently am kind of skulking around is actually in Giza, as you can probably tell by the rather enormous pyramid right there. I wanted to start here because, well, I really like this area, and because, this is probably one of the things that people tend to think of most when they hear the word ancient Egypt. They think of the Great Pyramids and things of that nature, so here we are. That being said, the map for this game is freaking enormous. Look at this, it's huge. You got all this. It's gigantic. I haven't been throughout all of it yet because a lot of this is a much higher level than I am, and I will die if I go there. But yeah, the map for this game is ginormous, and there's actually quite a lot to do in it. Even the places that are supposed to be open nothing, like Fayum, which is like a big lake, I think, and the Black Desert, which is of course a big, well, it's a desert. There's a lot actually to do in those places, the ruins to see, and loot to find in those places, so even the things that are technically nothingness still aren't exactly nothingness. Where I actually am now is a little side area to skulk around and liberate, so we're going to do that. You have control this time of a hawk that you can use as basically like a drone, kind of, and you can use Senu here to scout areas out for you. It's actually a really cool little mechanic, and I believe he, I'm not sure actually, can roam around the skies and locate things of interest for you. So, can mark people, kind of like using binoculars in a lot of other games of this sort. It can also help you find things like this, that being objectives. You can also stare at yourself. You can also use the bird to find, where is it? Treasure. There it is. Treasure. And that's the treasure for this area. So, I want to mark as many people as I can so I know where they're actually at, and I know where to approach from. And you can even skill into other abilities later that let you use the hawk to harass people for distraction purposes, and even mark them and see their patrol paths, see where they're going, like you're playing Horizon Zero Dawn or something. And that's, all really useful if you want to skill into that particular part of the tree. And that kind of brings me into one of the points of this game. I noticed that as early as Assassin's Creed 2, the series was going in kind of a... Oh, didn't notice him. In kind of an RPG direction. But it's sort of RPG light. And then by the time I had played the next one that I had actually tried out, which would be Black Flag, I had realized that, oh, there's a side quest here if I free this person.
Is that a Magi badge?
It is.
Over here.
Well, hang on.
Please, I am weak.
Well, I should probably, like, liberate this place first, my friend.
All of these are secrets. I know everything.
I doubt you know everything, but we'll give it a shot. And I noticed that by Assassin's Creed 4, there were even more RPG elements. We had, you know, the ship to customize. We had, like, gear to acquire and upgrade. And even in Assassin's Creed 2, you had the villa and things like that. So we were getting more and more into RPG territory. And now, by Origins, it is an action RPG. I mean, for all intents and purposes, Assassin's Creed has become an action RPG. You've got loot, you've got levels and experience and side quests and a skill tree, and as you saw on the map, you've got, I mean, a multi-branch skill tree, but as you saw on the map, you've got various areas with territories that actually have level requirements, or like level scaling, I guess you could say. Like you're playing an MMO or something. You can technically go to those areas, but everything will be of that level when you get there, so you'll probably get destroyed if you're not at least that powerful by the time you actually walk into them. We've got crafting and upgrading of loot to be at your level. It's an action RPG by this point. So that's one of the biggest things they've changed about the game, is its focus on stats and RPG elements. And I think that's actually improved the game a fair amount, because it's made improvements to the combat and changes to the combat possible as well. One of the big complaints that people have kind of leveraged towards Assassin's Creed as a series up to this point has been the combat has felt very formulaic. It's felt very, how would you put it, choreographed, very static. And that the counter button was basically like the I win button. All you had to do was stand there, wait for someone to attack you, and then hit the counter button. They die. Stand there, wait for someone else to attack you, you know, repeat the process until everyone around you has fallen. Like in the first Assassin's Creed, you weren't that capable in combat necessarily. You could still kill, but you were an assassin. And combat was not necessarily the main point of the game, especially with the like larger Templar units and things. You were really meant to assassinate them because you were an assassin. You weren't a like frontal combat warrior. Well, by even as early as Assassin's Creed 2, you were basically a god of death by that point, and you could just destroy everything that came your way with very little effort. That has changed now, and stealth is significantly more important. It's actually become as important as it was in the first game, in my opinion, and that's a really important change. I think that's a very good change. Combat is still possible. You're very capable in combat. You are a Magi, you're a warrior, but there are a lot of enemies in some camps, and there are also, I can't really show you one here because I don't see one, but in a lot of encampments, especially larger ones like forts and things like that, there are these braziers that the enemies can light that will summon reinforcements. So if you get spotted, there can be a lot of enemies on you very quickly, and you don't have a counter button anymore. You can't just counter an enemy and immediately kill them. And because there are levels and HP amounts and, like, you know, HP bars and things like that to worry about, it's more of an action RPG. Combat doesn't feel so choreographed. It has a more, I suppose, has more of a flow to it. You don't just lock on to an enemy by just pressing towards them and immediately hit them. You can miss very easily. You have a lock-on button, and if you're not using that liberally, maneuvering is very easy to, well, outmaneuvering is very easy to do. And flanking your enemy, attacking them from behind, does more damage, and it does more damage to you if the enemies do it to you, and they will. Enemies will attack you with range attacks while outmaneuvering you with some some melee attackers, and the whole thing just kind of falls apart very quickly on you, and you can't just stand there in the middle of a bunch of people while a few of them attack one at a time, waiting to take turns to get killed by you. It no longer works that way, and I personally approve of the changes that they've made. I like the increased difficulty of the combat, and I think that it works very well. It's still very fun. The combat is still a highly enjoyable part of the game, but it also makes the stealth and, you know, being an assassin in Assassin's Creed not just a play style, but actually the point again. Let's get him out of here and see what he wants.
You carry me. I will fall on my
Alright.
The gods are smiling. You are true hero.
You know.
Keep quiet. Head down.
Let's get him out of this temple. Now you saw that I was able to climb on a lot of things. Here, let's put you out on these hot rocks and stuff over here. I'm sure that won't be a problem on your bare skin. There you go. The actual climbing and like parkour controls have changed a bit, and in fact the control scheme in general has changed. Assassin's Creed before, of course, had this control scheme where you had a normal movement mode and then like a high profile movement mode by holding a specific button down, and you switch between the two just by holding that button. Excuse me, I'm very thirsty. That is not the case anymore. Now you still have the sort of special movement button, and it's Alt by default on the keyboard and mouse, but all of your other actions are basically the same without this button. It's just for movement specifically. It's basically like a parkour button, a climbing button. And instead of switching all of your other actions from like low to high profile, you don't have that kind of mode switch anymore. Again, it feels more like an action RPG control scheme. You've got your dodges and your attacks, your ranged attacks, all of this available to you at all times, and you walk, or you run rather, at all times. Oh god, hyena. And rather than having to hold the specific high profile movement button down to start running, there is instead a walk toggle button. So the new control scheme, in my opinion, is actually really pretty good. There's nothing really wrong with the old control scheme, but it wouldn't fit the new style of combat and everything that this game is actually using, so I'm glad they changed it. This is my horse. It's a legendary horse. I'm very proud of it, because I spent 5,000 gold Greek dollars on it. Very expensive horse. Okay. You can also get camels, and I mean really any game that lets you ride a camel, that's like a positive to me, because that's not very common. What a game lets you ride camels. Okay. Was it really worth a horse ride for that? It was like 6 seconds. Alright. Yeah, some palace. I was about to say. This is another interesting thing. I like the side quests in this game actually are pretty enjoyable. They're well voiced, and they feel somewhat, I suppose, they have personality to them. I also like how this avoids, this gives me some hope for Far Cry 5, by the way. This game is avoiding, to me, at least in my opinion, a lot of the problems that Ubisoft open world games have had when it comes to their open world objectives being a very cookie cutter, go here and do this, then go there and do that 500 times kind of thing, where you just sort of do the same thing over and over without feeling much of a sense of progression or consequence due to what you have done, except for the main storyline, and that's it. Everything else, the side stuff, doesn't really have much personality to it. It kind of falls flat in that regard. This doesn't have as much of that problem. There's a lot of variety in the side content, and how you can stumble upon it is actually quite varied. And the characters you meet along the way actually have some personality. And even small things, like for instance, you know, everyone has probably heard the phrase like liberate that outpost in a Ubisoft open world game before. And generally all that involves is you go to a supposedly oppressed area, you kill some dudes, everyone's like, okay, thanks, and you leave. But in this case, you actually will be, oh god, another hyena. You will be going to towns, and you'll hear people's various plights about how their captors have caused them troubles. And you will actually have to go through multiple missions, multiple pieces of side quest content to actually help them with their problems. And it's not just a case of you go there and kill the guards there and leave, because that won't really do anything. You'll need to actually, like, say, kill the archers around the town, first of all, to help people feel like they're not so watchdogged. and then and then you'll have to. Oh, good lord, that's a lot. Okay, here we go. And then you'll have to maybe help some people get their carts back that were stolen. And then you'll have to do this and that. It's a kind of a multi-step process that makes it feel like your actions have a bit more of an impact, a bit more of a lasting effect, rather than just go liberate this thing that never really feels like it had much of a use except for to give you some experience or whatever. I like that little extra feeling because, of course, it makes the world feel a bit more alive, and it is ancient Egypt. And there's a lot actually happening in the ancient world like this. Of, you know, people of the land, there's a lot they could do with that, and I'm glad that they didn't just take the easy road out. So there you were seeing some examples of some of the melee combat rather than the stealth, although it was with animals. There are lots of wild animals. It is Egypt. You got hyenas, crocodiles, even hippos, or lake cows, as they are known. Those are very dangerous, by the way. Interestingly, you've also got ranged combat in 4 different flavors. So, like this sucker right here, as you can tell, has actually got multiple arrows. This is a warrior bow, a legendary warrior bow, and it knocks 5 arrows at once. I was actually using a hunter bow for a while, which works like you would think of a video game bow working. You know, you hold the button down to draw back the arrow, you release it, it flies up in an arc and does a good amount of damage depending on how long you held it. That's how video game bows tend to work. If you want that experience, that kind of traditional gaming bow, that's the hunter bow. Then there's the warrior bow, which is basically like a shotgun bow. That's the one that I'm showing you there. There's also the predator bow, which is the other bow that I have equipped, because you can have 2 melee weapons and 2 bows equipped once you spec into the ability to do that, which I find useful for various situations, to be able to switch between them quickly. And the predator bow is a stealth-oriented, effectively like a sniper bow. It actually is the only one that aims in first person. It gives you a bit more of a zoom. It has a metal ring sight on it. Oh, this is a bigger bandit camp. This is going to take some doing. And good for demonstration, though. And there's also the quick bow. Light bow, quick bow, light bow. And it's a much smaller sort of hand, like infantry bow, that you can actually fire multiple arrows very, very quickly before even needing to re-knock more, like reloading effectively and pulling more out of the quiver. It's nice. Uh-oh, I didn't see him. It's very, very nice if you want to spec into it. And every bow also has a special ability that you can unlock by actually using the skill tree. I only have one of those right now, but they're each pretty cool. For instance, the sniper bows, the predator bow, actually allows you to guide the arrow. Allows you to go all Clive Barker's Jericho on him and then guide the arrow through the air, which is massively overpowered, by the way. In fact, I'll show you. I know the warrior bow, I don't have it, but the warrior bow's shot allows you to focus all 5 arrows on like a singular point. It like produces the spread significantly. And I think the hunter bows allows you to draw the shot back even farther, charge it for longer to do extra damage and break shields and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, the combat is possibly as good as it's ever been in Assassin's Creed because it feels significantly less stiff and predetermined and choreographed. There's also a lot of weapon types. I'm using a Khopesh right now. In fact, I'll just have to show you the gear screen here. So this is the gear screen where you equip things and also craft upgrades to your stuff. You can upgrade just about everything and various pieces of material that you can get from either killing things like animals or from getting them in loot around the world or even from intercepting shipments of materials, which can be more difficult. You can also do this. Deconstructing gear for materials like that. And so yeah, this is a sickle sword, which is basically a Khopesh. And there's also heavy, blunt spear and a lot of other types of weapon, well, weapon types. And the weapon types each have their own unique movesets and their own unique adrenaline ability. probably saw that I used one of those earlier. There's that, it's either blue or orange, it depends on the weapon type you're using. It's a meter above your health when you're in combat that slowly raises. And when it gets full, you can use an adrenaline ability. When it's blue, that means it's like a one-shot ability that fires off when you use it. For like the spear, for instance, is a big, really heavy upward swing that does like a tremendous amount of damage. Whereas with the Khopesh, it's orange, and orange is more like a rage mode kind of thing. It's a constant mode rather than a single ability that fires off. So it kind of slows time and allows you to get off multiple very quick swings that do a lot of damage. You can also parry like that. That's basically the replacement for the counter button. In previous Assassin's Creed games, it's more skill-based because you have to actually time it correctly, and some moves cannot be countered. I also noticed that you cannot parry animals, so you cannot parry a crocodile. Don't even try it. Alright. There we go. Alright, so there's those guys. I was seen, possibly. Show you a little different combat. Let me switch to my spear. You can also do things like this. If you just look at a flame with your bow out, you'll actually set your arrow on fire. And you can then shoot a fire arrow, like so. No problem. Alright. So yeah, there's actually a pretty good amount to do in this game. I should also mention as well, there's... you can go like ruin delving, even into the pyramids themselves, to find tablets that give you skill points. Lots of side quests, lots of rare and even legendary loot to find. Oh boy. There's also some other crazy stuff going on, like the ability to... Well, actually, there's those trials, the Trials of the Gods. Like the Trial of Anubis is active at the filming of this. I can't do those right now, though, because they're like level capped. They're level 40. 40 is the max level. I am not level 40. I am 24. So, no thank you. I'll have to wait. I think you actually have to fight the gods themselves in those. So you actually have to, like, beat Anubis, which sounds really fun, but I don't currently have the ability to do that. And I just need to go around, loot some stuff, and that's this location completed. I've gotten all the objectives here, but of course there's the side quest that I'm doing as well, so I should probably do that. Alright, I wanted to just kind of clear the place out first, though, to make it a bit easier. Now, there is a bit of an elephant in the room that I should probably address, and that is the game's performance.
Hello? Get me out of here.
Hi there.
They will be back any moment.
A lot of people are reporting very bad performance with this game, and, well, you're probably seeing, at least here, that it's performing very well. Whoops. I can only really report... I'm gonna put you down. The performance that I'm getting, of course, because I can only, test it on the system that I have. But as far as what I'm experiencing, did not mean to do that. There are light and heavy attacks as well as charged heavy attacks and stuff like that too, by the way. As poorly demonstrated. And, well, you can see the stats for my PC on my About page, but the main components that matter for this are the fact that I'm using a 7th generation i7 processor, 7700K, which is a quad core at 4.2 gigahertz, and my graphics card is a GTX 1080. Now, you'd expect that to run most things really, really well, but the problem is there are a lot of people that claim to have that exact setup and are saying that they get like 15, dips to 15 frames, 15 FPS even in places like Alexandria, which is like a very heavy city, very large city with lots to render. I'm not getting that, even though people with the same setup are saying that they have that problem. I personally don't. Even in Alexandria, I still stay at 60 with this setup, and everything's maxed out except for motion blur, which I keep off because it makes YouTube videos look horrible. I don't like motion blur anyway. But yeah, so I can really only... That doesn't mean that the... Well, I guess I should say that doesn't mean the performance problems don't exist. That just means that I can only explain what I've seen. And the explanation is that a lot of people are saying the VM Protect layer of DRM this game is using is affecting the CPU and making it work extra hard, basically maxing it out at 100% early, effectively creating an artificial bottleneck, more or less, as if you are using a worse CPU than you are, kind of, and you can't run the game properly because it's maxing out early, and most of that power isn't being used to actually render the game, and your graphics card is just sitting there not really caring, barely working, and it's causing your frame rate to drop heavily and your CPU temperature to rise very sharply because it's working very hard. Now, personally, I haven't had this issue. My CPU usage does not go to 100% when playing this game. Even in very large areas like Alexandria, it doesn't cap out at 100%. And my temperatures don't go up really dangerously high. They only get to about 60 degrees, which, I mean, even The Witcher 3 actually puts my CPU temps above that. My CPU goes to like 68 when I'm playing Witcher 3, so that's just what I can tell you, though. And like I said earlier, that doesn't mean the problems don't exist. And just trying to say that from what I can see from the machine that I can test it on, it runs fine for me, but there's clearly a problem for some people. So let that be known, I suppose. From what I can tell, at least, it seems to me like the game is...
Looks like the bandits moved up. Across some hyenas. Is Tura among the dead?
It seems like the game is actually optimized for i7 CPUs. And like 5th, 6th, and 7th generation i7s. And if you have anything other than that, you may have problems running it. Maybe. Possibly. Again, it's not a guarantee. But from what I can tell, from where the reports are coming from, it seems like if you have, say, an i5 or one of the various AMD CPUs that should theoretically be strong enough to actually run the game fine, you may have problems that you shouldn't normally be having. That's all I can really say. Like I said, for me it runs fine, but it's clear that I'm not the only person that's tried to play this game, and that some people are having problems they should not be having.
What's this?
So yeah, that's Assassin's Creed Oranges. It's really enjoyable to me, actually. I like the combat and stealth system changes, the movement changes, and just really changes all around. I think it was... Assassin's Creed is a series that's been in need of some changes. I like the series, but a lot of people, I think, would probably agree in saying that it mechanically has gotten kind of stagnant over time, and they have been kind of relying on making the same framework over and over again with just a different world over it. And I think it's time that changed, and I'm happy to say that they kind of bit the bullet and did it, and it has paid off, because this game's actually really, really fun. If you want to pick this up, I'll put the description link that I usually put below to the Steam page, and do keep your refund ready, I suppose, if the game doesn't run as expected, because again, I'm sorry I can't really report any kind of detailed like frame rate statistics for you, but I can only tell you what I know. And what I know is it works fine for me. Hello? Oh! I will say I have had one strange performance issue, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. and that is in very busy areas like Alexandria. Sometimes the map gets jittery.
At last. The ring Oba
The actual game doesn't, but when I opened the map to just, you know, fast travel somewhere just to look at where I'm going, sometimes the map has like a really low frame rate for a few seconds and then goes back to normal. I don't know why that is, but it only happens around really busy areas. So there is that. I don't know what's up with that. That needs to be fixed because it's really obnoxious. But anyway, yeah. If venturing around an ancient Egyptian setting, doing some cool action RPG stuff interests you, then do pick this up, because I think that a $60 price tag on this is actually well worth it, and it doesn't seem to have any sort of scumminess along with its AAA price tag, in my opinion. So there you go. Give it a shot if you're interested. And if you liked this video, please feel free to let me know. If you did not, and you can do that too. Share it if you feel like it. And thank you very much for watching. Oh god, don't run into some ancient Egyptian grave building things. I'll see you guys next time.